I slept with the bartender at my husband's favorite bar, and now he's making sure everyone knows. It's crazy to think about how perfect everything was just a few months ago. My husband, Rory, was my best friend and my entire life. We had one of those relationships that people used to envy, the kind where everything felt easy. Our story was the definition of cliché. We met in college. He was the star athlete, and I was the girl who was constantly worried about her grades and passed every exam. I never thought he'd even look at me, but then one day he did. We dated for a year, got engaged a few months after graduation, and were married by the time we were 25. We built a life together that was, in most ways, picture perfect. It was everything I'd always wanted. Those early years together were full of daydreaming and planning. We were both broke college grads working shitty jobs, so dreaming was all that we had. We would talk about all the things we would do together and what our lives would be like. When we got older, things changed for the better. Rory was a successful engineer, which meant that he could give a pretty comfortable lifestyle. We got a house and a car and had the luxury of taking trips and affording pretty expensive stuff. I was a freelance graphic designer for a while, but I eventually stopped when Rory convinced me that he could easily support the both of us and our kids if we chose to have them. Our schedules were flexible, and we made time for each other no matter what. He loved his work, and I loved watching him be so passionate about something. But his work was also what caused the little cracks in the foundation that we'd built together. But I'm getting ahead of myself, though. Before the issues started, everything was good. Our life was a simple, beautiful routine. We had breakfast together, we went on runs, watched the same TV shows, all of it. We tried to spend every possible moment together, which was pretty easy since I didn't work, and his could be remote when needed. One of our favorite things to do was go to this bar called The Anchor. Well, it was his favorite thing, but I was glad to go with him on the days he asked, which wasn't often. It was Rory's spot before he even met me. The bar had this woody, hearty vibe that reminded him a lot of the bars in Ireland. It made him feel a little closer to home, and I loved that for him. That was where he took me on our first date, and where he told me he loved me months later. Not ideal for a first date or telling your girlfriend you love her, but I didn't mind. I could tell that it meant a lot to him. When Rory's company started a new project a few states away, we were both excited for him. It was a huge apartment complex, the kind of job he'd always dreamed of managing. The plan was for him to go out there for a few weeks and then come back home, like he had done for other projects. We were used to that kind of schedule. His job kind of waxed and waned, so he would travel for a bit and then stay remote for a while. It was only ever for a few weeks when he traveled, so we never missed each other too much. And if we did, we FaceTimed every night and texted throughout the day. But this time was different. After a few weeks out there, he called me one night and told me that he wouldn't be back soon, that since the project was more intense, he had to stay for a lot longer than usual. The project was more demanding than he'd anticipated. A lot of things were going wrong, and he was working long hours. We were still talking, but our conversations became shorter and more focused on his work. The calls that used to last for hours were now just a brief 20 minutes. He was stressed, and I felt helpless being so far away. The distance between us went from being just physical to me feeling like he was pulling away emotionally too. I told myself it was just temporary, that he was swamped, and that things would get back to normal once he was home. I thought the whole thing would end up taking only a few more weeks, but then weeks turned into a month, and then 2 months, and suddenly I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing him. I missed him more than I could put into words. I missed the little things about our life together. The house started to feel too big and too quiet. Our dog, Rosie, would sleep by the door waiting for him. It was heartbreaking to see her do it all the time, but honestly, it almost felt like I was doing the same. I was lonely and just moping around the house, waiting for him to get back. I was telling all this to my friend Sarah one day when she suggested I do something for myself. She suggested that I stop acting like my world was ending and go out, go to the gym or a movie or something. She wanted me to do something fun to avoid being so cooped up in the house, but all I wanted was to feel closer to him, to be near something that reminded me of us. So a few days later, I drove to the Anchor. It seemed like a harmless decision, a way to connect with him even though he was miles away. I thought that I would just order a beer, only have a few sips since I hated the taste, and then just enjoy being in a place that he loves. I had no idea it would be the start of everything falling apart. When I walked in, I was instantly reminded of him. I found a seat at the bar, ordered his favorite beer, and just sat there for a while, listening to the guys watching the game and the low music that was playing. I was trying to hold on to a piece of him and our past, but I didn't realize that in my attempts to feel near him, I was about to destroy us. I started going to the Anchor every other night. It became kind of like a ritual. I'd sit at the same spot at the bar and order the same drink. Most of the staff knew me already, so the smile the second I walked in, and I wouldn't even have to order sometimes because they already knew what I wanted. It felt like a connection to Rory. We were still talking on the phone every other day, but this way to be close to him when he was so far away. Being in his favorite place made missing him hurt less. But then one night things changed. I was sitting at the bar like usual, thinking about something I can't even remember, when the bartender comes up to me and asks, "You're in here so often, but you never talk. What's your story?" His name was Alex. I knew that because I'd heard the others speak to him. He'd poured my drink a few times, but we'd never spoken. He had a nice smile and kind eyes. I was more than hesitant to speak to him. I knew that I was nowhere near drunk enough to spill my guts to a stranger, but for some reason, I found myself opening up anyway. I told him about Rory, about the long work trip, and how I was just trying to feel connected to him. Alex listened patiently, and when I finished, he just nodded slowly. Then he asked if it was Rory the engineer, and when I said yes, he told me that he knew him, that he'd seen him around a lot. That should have been it. There wasn't much else to say, but I don't know. I felt the need to continue the conversation. Maybe I was just bored, or maybe I wanted to speak to someone who knew him. I'm not sure what. We talked for a while longer that night, and it was easy. He didn't pry or make me feel weird about my nightly visits. He just talked about the bar, the regulars, and the city. It was to the kinds of conversations that I'd been having with Rory, which was usually about his work or the details of his trip. This was light, and I didn't realize how much I'd been missing that kind of simple interaction until him. From that night on, my visits to the Anchor were different. I still went to feel close to Rory, but I also went to see Alex. We fell into a comfortable routine. I'd come in, and he'd have my drink waiting. We'd talk about our days, and he'd share funny stories about the people who came into the bar. It was innocent at first, just two people talking, getting to know each other. But as the weeks went on, our conversations went deeper. I felt like Alex was truly listening, and his attention felt so good after months of nothing. My friends noticed the change in me. I was happier, more talkative, and I was going out more compared to when Rory first left. I told them about Alex, describing him as a new friend. But they were suspicious. My friend Sarah was the most vocal. "You're a married woman and you're spending every night at a bar with the bartender?" were her words. They all disapproved and told me about how disgraceful it would be for me if the rest of the wives in our area found out, but I brushed them off and argued that it was nothing, that we were just friends, but the more nights we spent together, the more those words felt flimsy and weak. I was annoyed by their concern. I kept telling myself they were being dramatic. They didn't understand how lonely I had been and how much Alex's friendship had helped, how much it meant to me. I insisted to them that I was an adult and I could handle a simple friendship. I really thought I had everything under control. But deep down, I think I knew they weren't wrong. I knew there was a line I was dangerously close to crossing with Alex. I knew that, and still I kept going because it felt like I couldn't give up how Alex made me feel. I knew my friends were right, that this was getting too close, and that what I had with him wasn't normal, but I kept ignoring it, even as things progressed between us. He started walking me to my car after his shift ended. Sometimes he would hold my hand as we walked. He never addressed it, and I never pulled away. It was a small intimacy that was easy to excuse, so I did. His subtle gestures were everywhere. He would brush his fingers against mine as he handed me a drink, or tuck my hair behind my ear when it got too messy. He never made a move, never said anything that felt overtly like a come-on, but the flirting was there in every little thing he did. He was testing the waters, and I was letting him. I would tell myself not to think too much about it, that he was probably just a really friendly, touchy guy. But the truth was, nothing about me and Alex felt friendly. It felt like we had passed that point a while ago and neither of us wanted to stop. I knew that I was being reckless, that I was playing a very dangerous game, but it felt too good to feel wanted again. Things changed one night when Rory called me. It was late, and I was already a few drinks in at the bar. I stepped outside to take the call. His voice on the other end of the line was tired. He had texted me earlier that he would find out when he was supposed to come home that day. We'd both hoped that it would be soon, a few more weeks at most. But on that call, he told me that it was all still indefinite, and he was likely going to be gone for some more months. The call made me feel guilty and lonely. I felt terrible for not being there for him, and I felt even worse for things with Alex. I went back inside and I got so drunk that Alex had to drive me home. I have no memory of how I got from the bar to the car, or even of the ride home, but I do remember him helping me out of the car and into the house. He helped me get settled in bed. He sat on the edge of the bed and gently moved my hair out of my face. His fingers brushed against my cheek, and I felt a lot of things I shouldn't have felt. We stared at each other for a long while, and then he leaned in, and I thought for sure he would kiss me, but he didn't. He just hesitated, then stood up, and told me to get some rest before he left. That night was the start of something, though. I had left the door open for him, and Alex was finally ready to make a move. He stopped waiting for me to come to the bar and started coming to my house to check on me instead. He would drop off coffee or lunch or just come to talk. I told myself I should tell him to stop, that it was inappropriate. I mean, what if one of the other wives saw him? I should have told him to stop, but I didn't. The house felt so empty when he wasn't there, and his presence made me happy. He would come by and we'd sit in the living room and talk for a bit, just like we used to at the bar. He made me feel wanted and interesting and all these other things, and those feelings were so much more powerful than any guilt I felt. One night, he came over and I asked him to make us some cocktails. We were just hanging out and it felt so normal to have someone in the house again, laughing and talking with me. We sat on the couch and we both got more than a little drunk. I don't even remember what led to it, just that suddenly he was leaning in and I was doing the same. This time there was no hesitation. The kiss was honestly amazing. It was everything I had been telling myself it wasn't. We kissed for a long time, and it was a relief to finally give in to the connection between us. One thing led to another, and we ended up having sex. That was supposed to be the end of it. It should have been a one-time mistake fueled by loneliness and alcohol, but it wasn't. It was the beginning of an affair. We started meeting at my house a few times a week. It wasn't just physical, though. It felt emotional, too, in a way. I felt so understood, cared for, and seen with him. I knew what I was doing was wrong, and I was terrified of what would happen if Rory ever found out, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. I told myself it was just a temporary thing, something I was doing while Rory was away. The moment he came back, it would end, and he would never have to know. I told myself that it would be my one secret, my one act of pure selfishness. When Rory called me again weeks later and told me that he would be soon, just a few weeks left, I didn't have to fake my happiness. I loved my husband. It was just that I needed something to keep me going while he was away. I could have ended things with Alex after that call, but no. I wanted to be selfish. I wanted a few more weeks to be this person who felt so alive. I thought I had enough time left to get it out of my system and be done with it. I didn't know how wrong I was. One night, after a few drinks at the bar, Alex and I drove back to my house. We were both a little drunk, and we stumbled into the house. We barely made it through the door before we were pulling each other's clothes off. Our clothes were half off, and we were kissing against the wall in the entryway when I heard the sound of a key in the door. The door swung open, and there was Rory, a smile frozen on his face. The air went out of my lungs, and my heart stopped. We were all stuck in place. Rory, my husband, was staring at me half-dressed in the arms of another man, and that other man was Alex, the bartender from his favorite bar. He looked at Alex, then at me, and then back at Alex again. The confusion on his face was replaced by cold anger. He looked at Alex and in a voice that was scarily calm, told him to get out. Alex didn't hesitate. He pulled on his shirt and pants, rushed out the door without looking back, leaving me alone with Rory. The silence that followed was suffocating. Rory closed the door and just looked at me for the longest time. Then, without yelling or even raising his voice, he demanded an explanation from me. Didn't yell or scream. I almost wish he shouted, that he got angry at me. His anger would have probably been easier to handle than his coldness. I felt humiliated and completely exposed. I was still half-dressed and just standing there. I knew there was no way to lie, no way to cover it up. There was nothing left to do but confess. So the words poured out of me all at once. I tried to explain that it had been about the loneliness and about how much I had missed him. I told him it was a mistake, that it had been nothing more than a moment of weakness, something that happened because of his absence. I thought that if I explained it the right way, if I begged hard enough, he would see that I was still the woman he loved. I had just really messed up. I tried to make him believe that this was just one reckless, thoughtless decision. He pressed me for details, needing to know how long it had been going on, and I gave them to him. I told him that it had been months, and the second I did, I could see how disgusted he was. The silence that followed was louder than anything. Then he finally spoke. He said that the cheating was one thing, but the fact that it had gone on for months of us being on the phone together, really sickened him. I had been lying to him, pretending that I wasn't sleeping with another man, each time we spoke. It was unforgivable. He looked at me like he barely recognized me and told me that I had destroyed everything. He would never be able to go to that bar again. He could never go to his favorite place and not be reminded that his wife cheated on him with the first available man. What we had was over and there was no fixing it, no getting back to where we were. He told me that what even disgusted him more was me trying to put it all on him, blaming him for spreading my legs for a lowly bartender. He asked me how I had the audacity to blame it all on loneliness, like he wasn't lonely too, like he hadn't been through some of the worst months of his life. He had no idea that he would come home to something even worse. By the time everything was said and done, he could barely look at me. When he finally told me to leave, there was no room for argument. He didn't want my apologies or my tears. He didn't want to hear another excuse. My crying and begging were useless, and I knew it. His decision was final, and the only thing left for me to do was follow it. So I did. I left. I put on my clothes with shaking hands and packed a small bag. Every movement felt like total humiliation. It was a punishment and a reminder that I was the one who had ruined my own life, piece by piece. I left the ring and my life in that house. I should have known I would have to give them up when I took things further with Alex. I should have known I would lose it all. After that night, everything began to collapse faster than I could keep up. He told people. He told everyone. Not just his family and close friends, but co-workers, neighbors, everyone. He wanted to make sure all the people we knew found out about what I'd done. And Alex didn't deny it either. Why would he? He had nothing to lose. I was the idiot who risked it all for a few nights of feeling seen and someone in my bed. I couldn't even pretend to live normally anymore. Familiar places don't feel so welcoming anymore. I can never step foot in the bar again. I can't even drive past it without feeling my stomach twist. And worse than that are all the other familiar places. Our places. The coffee shop, our favorite diner, boutiques I used to like, spas I used to visit. I never realized just how small our town was until it all happened. When the divorce papers came, it all became real. It wasn't just whispers, stares, and speculation anymore. It was final. Rory wanted out of our marriage. He wanted nothing to do with me, and he was determined to leave me with nothing. And the truth was, he didn't even have to try very hard. I had no money of my own. I hadn't worked in years, not since I gave up my job to be a housewife. He supported me completely, and I never thought to question it. Why would I? I thought we'd always be together. Now all those years of depending on him feel like I've been waking blind, unaware that I could lose it all. The fallout wasn't just financial, though. It also ruined me socially. The other wives found out, so did my friends. No one wanted to be seen with me. I was the pinnacle of scandal. I used to be involved in everything from charity events to community fundraisers and little gatherings with the wives in the area, but now I'm avoided like the plague. I had a role and a reputation before Alex, and all of it is gone now. My name and my humiliation was in every conversation. People don't want me around. not when my presence stirs up gossip or makes them uncomfortable. Most of the women I thought were my friends have cut me off completely. Some didn't even bother with an excuse. They just stopped returning my calls. They all know the real reason for the divorce, so it makes sense that they wouldn't want to be seen with me. Now I'm crashing in a friend's spare room. Not even one of my closest friends. Those ones want nothing to do with me anymore. I'm living out of a suitcase because I promised her I wouldn't stay long. I've been making plans to sell some of my more expensive stuff just to stay afloat, but it's taking some time to find a buyer that's not in the area. The shame might just kill me if I saw one of the wives or my friends even wearing some of the designer pieces that I've had to give up. For the first time in my life, I have no idea how I'm going to take care of myself. It's all gone. The studio I used to help manage with him, gone. The house I decorated and made into a home, gone. The life where bills were paid without me worrying how, gone. I spend most of my time just thinking about how stupid I was and how careless. I replay the choices over and over, but I never feel better. I should have walked away, but I didn't. And now all I have left are regrets. I don't know what comes next. I have no money, no job, no stability, and no partner to lean on. The divorce process has already started, so I've lost my marriage, my home, my reputation, my friends. I've lost it all, and there's no way I'll ever get back what I carelessly threw away.